Hey there, Gary Parrish. It's Monday, May 2nd, 2022. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching live on YouTube, you know what to do. The deadline for players to enter the transfer portal and be eligible next season, it has passed. And some interesting names got in the portal in the past 48 hours. Kentucky's Keon Brooks, Florida's Keontae Johnson, Baylor's Matthew Meyer. We're going to get to those things in a bit, but I did want to start with a column you wrote heading into the weekend about the one-time transfer waiver and name, image, and likeness rights and the seismic change that those two things have brought to college athletics. It came to a head with the Isaiah Wong situation at Miami. You talked to a lot of people in the industry about this, including a lot of coaches. Just your broad takeaway from what you learned from those conversations.
The impetus for the column had been building for, a week and a half, 2 weeks, just in talking to coaches, hearing from coaches, these people, calling me unprompted to kind of just, do what coaches do, which is to complain. They do a lot of things, but coaches, man, do these guys just love to complain in the offseason. And I'm willing to be a sounding board for that because, frankly, it helps inform things going around about the sport and understanding more of their grievances and sometimes non-grievances. But it was becoming ever clear that this issue of name, image, and likeness, players going into the portal, having immediate eligibility, having people represent these players, and having a situation where it wasn't companies finding players to pay them for their name, image, and likeness. It was players looking to transfer so that they could find someone to pay them a lot of money for their name, image, and likeness had become an issue that was consuming the coaching profession and still is consuming the coaching profession. In fact, after I wrote the column, I talked to Eric Musselman at Arkansas on Sunday, and he said I could use this on the record. He said, it's so outrageous that I spent more time on the phone with transfers than I did preparing for Gonzaga. And they wound up winning that game against Gonzaga in the Sweet 16. And I said, that can't be true. He's like, I'm telling you, I spent just as much time, if not more, talking to transfers, people finding me, than I did when I was trying to prepare my team to play Gonzaga, which is frankly outrageous. But as a head coach, you feel obligated because you just don't know. And at that, Arkansas is going in the second weekend. They obviously wound up winning that game, and they don't make it to the Final Four, but they make another good deep run in the tournament. So, but that there's a chance you might lose players. And even as we speak, J.D. Note left, Jalen Williams, he's 50-50. Will he return? Will he not return? So anyway, all this stuff was building up to this. And then the Isaiah Wong thing happens on Thursday night. We podcasted. So this is the first time we've talked to each other since the Wong story even broke. We last podcasted on Thursday morning. And what happened was a first. You had an agent for a player say, if we don't get more money, we're leaving, or we're at least going in the transfer portal in addition to Isaiah Wong going through the pre-draft process. I thought it was actually a fairly significant moment in the history of college athletics because this had never happened. This is the kind of thing that we're used to seeing every July with a star NFL player or six, or we hear, leaked out through, prominent media personalities, through NBA players and their agents, right? This has just not been something that happened at the college level. And so it was kind of the reason I read the column was Wong really prompted me to do it. I wanted to see if he was going to go through on going into the portal. He stared down a billionaire. And to be honest, both men kind of got what they wanted. Wong is not going to get more money from John Ruiz, this Miami booster, this billionaire who already signed Wong to a deal. And then Nigel Pack came in and got more money after not doing a thing to help Miami make its first Elite Eight in school history. Wong's like, I want more. And then Ruiz, apparently, they patched things up. Wong's not going in the portal. He'll either return to Miami or he'll pursue a pro career. I would think returning to Miami is the much more likely scenario at this point. And he just, his threat to go into portal, it wilted away within 24 hours. So there's a ton in the column. I don't want to ramble too much here, but it just addresses this thing that's not surprising, but still, we really need to talk about. And that's the fundamental difference between guys that have earned their money through name, image, and likeness. Companies are finding them. They want to pay. Kansas players reaping rewards off of taking a title tour, GP, right around that stake. Oscar Tshiebwe is standing to become a millionaire playing college basketball, the likes of Hunter Dickinson. These kind of players where they're established, they're returning to their schools, they're getting paid because they actually have value. There's a difference between that. I had a coach and what else is happening. I mean, I had a coach call me on Sunday night, and I won't say which coach it is. He was in the NCAA tournament, and he said, he's not looking. They're not looking for pity. They're not looking for anyone to feel bad for these coaches. He's like, I get paid a ton. I'm just telling you, we made the tournament, and the last 3.5, 4 weeks of my life have been miserable because we haven't even stopped to reflect on what an awesome season it was because we're so caught up in trying to get these transfers. We're losing out on them. There are guys in the portal that are trying to transfer to my program that averaged, 12 minutes a game, asking how they can make $50,000 in name, image, and likeness. And what I told the coach, and he agreed, I was like, listen, I think every player deserves to get paid. No doubt about it. But if you average 11 minutes a game, and you're transferring to a school that's outside the top 30, the top 35, your name, image, and likeness carries almost no value. That's the reality of this situation. Now, if you want to have the conversation about these players should ultimately all get paid by the schools through a union, I think that's a conversation we're getting closer toward. And I think that would be a good thing. And maybe that's the thing that will help eliminate the situation we have right here, GP. But it's just amazing. I have never seen one issue dominate the coaching landscape the way this is right now. I mean, these guys are just, they're exhausted, they're freaked out. Again, no violins on this side, none, but it's just the reality of it. And you hear it from the football side as well. Jordan Addison, the USC, I say the USC wide receiver, he'll probably be that soon. He's not even technically in the portal yet. The Pitt wide receiver, who's the best wide out in college last year. There's just all this allegations of tampering, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a humongous deal, and it was worth writing about. And so I did just that.
I thought the Isaiah Wong situation was awesome and really noteworthy. Just to contrast it with where we were, say, even 10 years ago. Can you imagine 10 years ago a college basketball player's agent announcing on, through a media outlet that if his client doesn't get more name, image, and likeness rights money, he will enter the transfer portal by the deadline. I mean, the whole thing is wild to think about. And the reaction on Twitter was hilarious and unsurprising. Some people were really offended by this. And as I pointed out on Twitter, coaches have been telling schools for decades that if they don't get more of this or more of that, they are going to leave, which is the equivalent of what Isaiah Wong did. Now, John Ruiz called his bluff and then said, but I'll help you get some more over here. And so, everybody, Isaiah Wong's going to get more money than he was going to get, this time last week, I'm assuming, but it's not going to come from John Ruiz, who gets to say, I told you I don't renegotiate, and I don't. So don't try to, we reach a deal. That is the deal. We're not going back to it. So everybody gets to walk away from it saying, I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. So good for the Miami community. But I'm just not going to be offended when players do in this space, when players do exactly what coaches do all the time, at least coaches with options. I remember a coach at some point over the past 10 years had a good job, but was offered what is, if you put both jobs on the table for an unemployed man, he would take this other job. So it was a better job, but the guy liked his job and he was waiting for an even bigger job. And I was talking to him while this was still going on. And I was like, are you going to would you take this? Can they throw enough money at you to get you to do it? And he said, no, I'm not going to take it. But what I am going to do is drag this thing out long enough so that I can get what I want from my current school. I want a bigger recruiting budget. I want more money for my assistants. I want more private planes. So I'm going to tell my school, if you don't give me these things, I'll go take this job. But if you give me these things, I'll stay here. And he got what he wanted, and he stayed there. How is that any different than what Isaiah Wong did last week? I mean, it's not. And so, this is the space we're now working in, and I have no issue with players taking advantage of that space and leveraging situations to try to get more compensation. You point out that we've got to figure out, what is the difference between somebody truly capitalizing on their name, image, and likeness, like Oscar Tshiebwe is about to do at Kentucky after becoming a Kentucky star, and somebody just pay for play. Hey, if you come here, we'll give you $800,000, and we'll call it name, image, and likeness. The issue, of course, is like I know what you mean, but there's no way to draw a line in between those things. There's no, in this space where we're currently operating, there is no way, unless you're just going to put together another committee and have them rule on each situation. And then guess what happens? You're going to court again. Mm-hmm. So this is just the way we're going to live for a little while. I talk to coaches same way you do, and they're frustrated. They're exhausted. They're not asking anybody to feel sorry for them.
They're not. They're just saying, like, I appreciate the insight, because they're like, just listen, man. Like, it's the job description now ain't even what it was 2 years ago, and they're not even looking for sympathy. But you can still explain like how tough the situation is, and we can put it into context.
Right. Two things can be true. These guys get paid an incredible amount of money to do a job, but it is always been a hard job, and now it's harder than ever. It's always been a demanding job, and now it's more demanding than ever. And I thought Brad Underwood's clip from last week that we talked about was perfect. He said, it's not fun. This is not fun. I've heard from other coaches who say the job's not fun anymore. The paycheck's great. I love the practices, but I don't like the rest of the stuff, man. This is not what I thought this is not what I thought my job was. So when I talk to coaches and even other people in the industry, they say two things largely. The NCAA had decades to work on this and get out in front of it and try to come up with a system that was more fair for the student athletes. But they kept giving nothing, and then student athlete empowerment became a thing, and now here we are in this very complicated space. So this is the NCAA's fault, and the NCAA is getting what it deserves, I guess. But what they also say, and I on some level agree with this, that this model we have right now is not sustainable. Again, both things can be true. Student athletes deserve to capitalize in any way that any other normal student would be allowed to capitalize. And if that means getting 6 figures or even 7 figures name, image, and likeness rights, then congratulations. But the way the system is operating now, with agents literally calling other schools and saying, I represent a player at school A. He is interested in coming to your school, but it would take this, and this. Can you get that done? Like, I don't know if that is sustainable. And so Dan Walton, my friend at USA Today, wrote a column about this as well. And one of the points he's made is a point I've made for a while, and something he and I have talked about, extensively over the years. And that's that the first step in, quote, fixing this, if you think it's an actual problem, and not everybody does, but if you do, is you've got to acknowledge that this is professional sports. It starts there. The clinging to amateurism, as long as you're doing that and allowing the boosters to just pay everybody however they want, it is going to be complicated and frustrating and exhausting for everybody involved. And there'll be some nightmare stories that emerge. So you've got to let go of that and acknowledge that this is professional sports. And as Dan wrote, make the student athletes employees, cut them in on the massive amount of revenue being raked in by football and basketball, collectively bargain the terms of engagement, and then sign athletes to enforceable contracts. That is the end game here. That's where we have to get to. Now, who's smart enough to lead us there? I don't know. The NCAA is, operating with a lame duck president right now. How we get there, I'm not sure. But that is ultimately where we have to get. And until we get there, this is the world we're living in right now.
As the story detailed, I listed, I don't know, 8 players, 8 transfers. I could have given you 10 more. That their recruitments is also kind of the driving force behind the column, just to kind of explain how it's working with so many of these transfers. Not every single one, but plenty of like what are considered like, top 25 to 30 guys. What's happening is they've gone into the portal, and be it an agent, a parent, some sort of representative is going to other schools, or when they're contacted saying, yes, I want to be clear in how I'm framing this. The fit for the player at the school is a significant part of the discussion. The academics is still, as I talked with a few coaches, because I wanted to be like, some coaches are completely like, man, like the school part of this just isn't even a fact. A couple coaches are like that, but a lot aren't like that. A lot are like, no, like, when we talk to a player and or the parents, like they're still wanting to know, like the actual school part of this is still part of it. But the clincher, if you will, or as one coach put it to me, the tiebreaker is, of course, the money. And you have situations where agents for these players are going to schools, and it's, again, this isn't even illegal. It's not even tawdry. Like, it's not illegal, but it's still the way that the system has worked for decades and decades still has people's instincts to flinch at it, where a representative will say, listen, I mean, there's a player right now that is considered a top 10 to 15 transfer. And that player's agent has gone to schools and said, we want to talk about fit, but also when it gets down to it, my player is worth more than Nigel Pack. He's a better player than Nigel Pack was. Nigel Pack screwed up for a lot of guys in this, because listen, all good luck to Nigel Pack. I hope he's awesome at Miami. And in fact, it would be amazing if he was great, even better than he was at Kansas State. But I haven't talked to one person who believes Nigel Pack is worth $400,000 in terms of his name, image, and likeness. I don't happen to believe he's worth $400,000. The only one that might is John Ruiz. He's a billionaire. He can do whatever the hell he wants with his own money. But it ties back to this one particular player, in that some schools that wanted to get involved said, we're not going to align our. Again, the schools are not paying the players. It's the third party. It's the boosters, or it's the companies. But the way this works is you have a program or a NIL collective connected to these people, and you need to make sure it's communicated that, you're helping foster that relationship, which, by the way, is against the rules. That is still not legal at the NCAA level. Coaches actually active. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Of course it happens. With some, it doesn't, apparently. Some coaches swear to me they are not doing it. And I even checked in on the Miami thing, and Larinaga apparently, like, he doesn't even talk to this billionaire, and has not been satisfied with how this has all gone down. That being said, he did get the talent there. He also got a great transfer, Norchad Omier. So anyway,
if I was the coach at Miami, John Ruiz would be my best friend.
That's not how that's going down with Larinaga.
I know, but if I were the coach at Miami, I would hand him a recruiting list and say, I want this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. Go see if you can make it happen.
I'll get to that point in just one second here. But that being said, what you have in the portal, again, what I wrote in the column, Isaiah Wong purely did publicly what is happening behind the scenes, and is to a heavy extent, it's done in college football. It's done in men's basketball. We are shopping our player. Let us know how much you can make in NIL money. And this has like these trickle-down effects where these guys who are like the 7th, 8th guy on the depth chart at mid-majors, like they're going into the portal and they're asking, like, what is my NIL opportunity? And like a couple coaches have said, like, you don't want to sound like a jerk, but you have none.
Right.
You averaged like 4 points on a team that was in a mid-major league that didn't go to the tournament. Like, young man, I'd love to see if we might be able to mix you into you have zero value in your name, image, and likeness. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. That's also the market at play. Not everyone's going to get paid, but because you have stories like Isaiah Wong that goes mainstream, Nigel Pack goes mainstream, it's going to have this feeling where these other guys, where does that line stop from when you're good enough to actually receive money for your name, image, and likeness, and where you're a jag, you're another guy. You don't carry any value right now because it hasn't been earned there. It's been a wild time. One quick text I got from a coach, a power conference coach. He said, after the story went up, he said, We should all just stop pretending that this isn't open market recruiting. This stuff has nothing to do with the value of these kids' name, image, and likenesses. This is just paid recruiting. And if everyone was good with that, let's just call it that. I mean, in many ways, that is what's happening.
Of course, that's what's happening. I mean, you say, is Nigel Pack's name, image, and likeness really worth $400,000? Of course, it's not. He has 4,800 followers on Twitter. If he's worth 400,000, I'm worth 400 million. All right. Of course, his name, image, and likeness rights are not worth that. But a billionaire decided, I want that guy to play point guard for my favorite school, and so this is what I'm going to offer him to do it. And now we got the deal done. And so you hear, like in this case, Kansas State fans would be upset. Like, how are we supposed to compete with that? I find you a billionaire booster who's willing to throw around money like that, would be the obvious answer. But again, I keep going back to the coaching ranks. You brought up Eric Musselman earlier. A great example here. He was an unbelievable coach at Nevada. But when Arkansas decided they wanted him, everybody understood Nevada can't keep him. And everybody's fine with that. And so when a player at the same level gets bigger opportunities, I'm not going to have a problem with them taking advantage of those opportunities. And, to circle back to, is Nigel Pack worth it? If somebody decides he is, then he is. It's not for name, image, and likeness. That's how they're getting it done. It is just for come play at my school. Think of this. Remember when Greg Marshall got that massive contract at Wichita State? And it was like, were they still in the Missouri Valley Conference at the time? But it was like, is a Missouri Valley coach really worth $3 million a year? If some billionaire booster decides that's what I want to pay him to be here, then absolutely. How is that any different than what just happened with Nigel Pack? It's not. A billionaire booster decided this. I don't care what Nigel Pack's actual worth is to somebody else. I want to make sure he plays basketball here. This is how much money it's going to cost to make it happen. Deal done.
Agreed. We don't have, listen, we're not going to ever do this. We could do 5 hours on it because there's so many angles on this. But to your point you said before, this is going to happen. This is happening. And I actually wonder if it might eventually get snuffed out and is no longer legal in a year's time, 2 years time, 4 years time. And how you stop it, I don't know. But you just mentioned, if I was a head coach and I had a relationship, I want a relationship with a billionaire. All right, here's my list. Go find these guys. That is happening with some of these schools, these power conference schools, where there are these NIL collectives, okay, which is basically just pulling a bunch of money and saying, here's how much money we can disperse amongst the program, the team, the athletic department, whatever, right? And I mean, there's one school, at least one school that I was told about in the past 48 hours where they are going to hire, at least they plan to hire, a full-time person at this school whose job it will be explicitly to scout, recruit, and bring guys in from the transfer. It will be their job. Like, here's our collective. I'm the representation, third party for the University of so-and-so and so-and-so. And we want you to come here and here's what we can do. Like, it will be someone who basically is paid in essence to pilfer talent off the transfer portal market. So that's a thing that obviously coaches have a huge issue with. Oh, by the way, coaches run players off. This goes on both sides of the coin. Whether that can actually be sustainable or not, I don't know. How you track and stop it, I also don't know. But that's another thing I didn't even get into the column, Parrish, where coaches got a huge issue with this idea of these like third-party people with these NIL collectives just being the ones that are they're headhunting, basically. And that is looked at as the model going forward. I would imagine that'll be one of the bigger topics that's addressed behind the scenes in the next few months at the NCAA level. Yeah,
if I were a college coach, the other thing I would do, to your point, and then we'll move on, I'd hire a general manager, somebody who is a de facto general manager,
yes,
who is dealing with all my boosters and figuring out what money is available and who is, to whatever extent they're allowed to be. And maybe this is where rule changes come in. But you have somebody who can deal with a lot of this stuff coaches don't want to deal with. Again, this is professional sports. We can stop lying to each other, and it should be treated as such. And if every professional sports franchise has a general manager or a president of baseball operations or whatever, well, then we're going to get to a point where college football programs and college basketball programs need them just the same. Let's move on. A couple of high-profile SEC players hit the transfer portal this weekend. We will get into that next. But first, word from our sponsor.
I need you to produce The Godfather.
We need hits.
Can one thing go right with this picture?
Cut it!
Couple of high-profile SEC players hit the transfer portal this weekend. Kentucky's Keon Brooks and Florida's Keontae Johnson. Let's be real quick on these, and I'm going to hold both of us to it. Let's start with Keon Brooks. Started 33 games at Kentucky, double-digit score. So this isn't somebody who was buried on the bench. He was a real player, a starter for a team in everybody's preseason top 5. You surprised he's leaving John Calipari's program?
A little bit, but I want to say it's hard to keep track of all this. I want to say like around the Final Four. I heard that this was a distinct possibility that he would wind up going into the portal there. So I'm not surprised on that level. He would rank among some of the best there. I do, for our listeners, so we're clear on one thing, because everyone was talking about this May 1 deadline. It's come and gone. You might have seen a few reporters express this, but just as a reminder, if you're listening, you aren't aware, players had until 11:59 on Sunday night to go to their compliance office and say, I want to go in the portal and formally request. And then the compliance officers have 48 hours to actually officially log it. So throughout Monday and throughout Tuesday, you will see more and more names populate, get reported. These guys are now in the transfer portal. They did not miss the deadline. There's a delay. There's a buffer there. So just be aware on all of that. I got told one relatively intriguing name. It was off record. I can't share it, but this is a top. I'll be surprised if that player goes in, but it's like a top 25 player in the country that might go in the portal here. So we'll kind of wait and see if that guy jumps in there or not. A little blind item for you. Keon Brooks is a really, really good player. I would rank him among the top 10 to 12 overall transfers that would now be available on such a list there. But no, to your question, GP, not utterly surprised. Kentucky still got some roster management to deal with, in addition to, oh, by the way, it just lost Jai Lucas, one of its assistants, who's now going to Duke.
My understanding is this isn't some like leverage play to try to get more money to come back to Kentucky, that he's actually leaving Kentucky. But, you know, it appears he just wanted a bigger role. And, you know, he's a role player on a very good team, a good role player on a very good team, and he wants to be a star. I just don't know that he's a star, or at least capable of being a star for a very good team. But, you know, he can give it his best shot. Sub 27% three-point shooter in all 3 years of college. So, you know, he apparently wasn't happy just playing a role at Kentucky. He wants to be more of a centerpiece at another program, and I'm sure he'll have opportunities to do that. But watching starters in double-digit scores from programs like Kentucky decide to go into the transfer portal just, I guess, sort of speaks to where we are as a sport right now. Keontae Johnson is an interesting situation as well. He, of course, was the SEC preseason player of the year heading into the 2020-21 season, collapsed in a game on national television in December 2020 and has never played in a game again. He has been diagnosed with a heart condition, and Florida's medical officials would not clear him to play. So I assume now he's just looking for a school where he'll be cleared to play, right?
Yeah, but he's also been accused of sexual assault in recent months there. So there is a whole lot going on here. And there's just no read on what Keontae Johnson's future holds. He also, you know, tried to explore what his chances might be in terms of taking a professional avenue. I was told, you know, prior to his life changing forever with that collapse and, you know, in late 2020, was projected as like an NBA level talent. But between the questions there and the unanswered questions with being accused of sexual assault, a very strange story. But he is, I mean, in terms of like known players that have gone into the portal, like him, Amani Bates. Here's a random nugget for you. I know Michigan fans are like thinking Amani Bates might. I was told that Michigan is not recruiting Amani Bates. I was told that could change by Monday, but I was told over the weekend that's not even the case there. So he's another big name. Keontae Johnson, Amani Bates, Keon Brooks. You mentioned some of the biggest names that
Matthew Meyer.
Matthew Meyer went in, right? That happened in the past 24 hours.
Yeah, but Jonathan Gavoni from ESPN is reporting that Meyer is he wants to stay in the NBA draft. His plan at this moment is not to play college. A lot of these guys are entering the draft and entering the transfer portal as well, just as a backup plan. Like if I decide at the last minute to pull out of the draft, my options will be completely open to transferring. So Matthew Meyer's in the transfer portal, but doesn't appear to be, it doesn't appear to be planning to play college basketball next season.
I would list those four along with these guys as the best transfers available. Iowa State's Tyrese Hunter, who's a lot of these decisions are coming very soon, some of them this week. AJ Green from Northern Iowa. Isaiah Mosley just went in from Missouri State. Really, really good scorer. Baylor Shireman from South Dakota State. Kevin McCullough, who said he's going to either go pro or he will commit to Kansas or Gonzaga, formerly at Texas Tech. If he transferred in league, that would certainly be intriguing. Kenneth Lofton Jr. is another one who's pursuing a pro career. I think if he were to return to college, that would really benefit him. I mentioned Bates, Malachi Smith from Chattanooga, KJ Williams from Murray State, Antoine Davis, who could finish his career among like the top three scorers in the history of the sport by nature of getting the bonus year from Detroit. He's out there. He's another player who wasn't listed in my article, but multiple coaches have said there is an NIL figure attached to his recruitment. Kyle Lofton from St. Bonaventure is another good one. Manny Bates. Those are, I think, the best transfers available for the most part. Again, a lot of these players will commit this week. Some will commit next week. Because again, you want to be able to get to a team where you think, you're going to have a spot. You'll be able to be productive in addition to everything that comes along with that. Keon Brooks he's an intriguing one. I actually think he's one of those players that would have a lot of different options and spots available to him. Keontae Johnson, I just don't know. I mean, there's so much that still needs to be figured out and discovered on that end from a health standpoint, let alone everything else attached to him off the court.
Yeah, like if you remember, there was a similar story, not the sexual assault stuff, but a similar story in recent years. Jared Butler was at Alabama and could not get cleared to play because of a heart condition. Went to Baylor. They cleared him to play. He became an All-American, most outstanding player on the Final Four, and then was drafted into the NBA. So if you're Keontae Johnson on a basic level, you're just trying to find a school that will medically clear you to play. But you're right, the sexual assault allegation does muck it up a little bit. Like you really want to take somebody with a serious medical condition and a sexual assault charge, allegation. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I'll let the universities figure that out, but it obviously complicates the Keontae Johnson situation. Before we get out of here, real quick on the Iverson Classic, I was on the sideline over the weekend. Was some of the best high school basketball prospects in the country competed against each other. Unfortunately, Amari Bailey, the UCLA commit, he pulled out of the Iverson Classic. So that was a little deflating. Really? That was a little deflating, a little disappointing.
Interesting choice of words there, my man.
It was a little disappointing. But beyond that, awesome day. Got to work with J.R. Smith for the first time, who was awesome. Mm-hmm. Just fun to be around, but also just like he was actually very good on the broadcast. He had never done that before, been a color analyst. And so he was fun. Brent Stover, obviously terrific. Allen Iverson was a part of the broadcast for about 10 minutes or so. He was terrific. Ja Morant was there. And I thought this was interesting. You talked about Michigan earlier. Very early in the broadcast, because JR had flown in a few days early and worked with the players, worked out with them, coached them, went through drills, that kind of stuff. And very early in the broadcast, Jett Howard made a play. And J.R. Smith said, that's the most NBA ready of all these guys.
Ooh, how about that?
Okay. So
I've said this last year. I don't know if to me, Jett Howard is like by his second year, he'll be an elite college player. I don't know if maybe he'll be one and done, but it's interesting that you said that.
It stood out to me because on the court is Cason Wallace, who is terrific. Keontae George, Cason going to Kentucky, of course. Keontae George going to Baylor. I mean, like high level, top 5, top 10 guys. Jett Howard is not thought of that way by the recruiting analysts. He's like a borderline top 40 guy, 4-star prospect. And J.R. Smith said, that's the most pro-ready guy here. I was like, that's interesting. I've never heard anybody say that. And then Jett Howard goes on to be the MVP of the game. After the game, I do a post-game interview with Jett, but before that, I'm sort of waiting for them to throw it to me. And Allen Iverson is talking to Jett Howard. And he's like having a real serious conversation with him. And he says, man, it comes easy for you. This is easy for you. You're going to be special. Just keep working hard because all the other stuff is naturally there. And so you have these guys who have been through it, walking away from that, going, yeah, Kaysen is unbelievable. Keontae, great. The best guy here is Jett Howard. And if Jett Howard's and I'm not saying he is, I'm just saying if Jett Howard is really one of the best high school prospects entering college, whoo boy, Michigan has got a chance to be really, really good.
Really, really good. As it stands right now, Michigan has no open, like if Moussa Diabate returns, which I think will probably happen, and then Caleb Houston returns, they don't have an open scholarship either. If they both return, we'll see if that winds up being the case or not there. But if you add that in there, yeah, Michigan could certainly enter into next season with plenty of optimism, if you will there. But overall, though, good little experience. It gets. It's not that it's buried, but it's a Saturday when you're going to play.
In the middle. It's a Saturday in the middle of the NFL draft.
I mean, it's just a tough spot. That's all.
Yeah. No, but it was a great experience. Like first off, just to be around. Like here's Allen Iverson. Juwan Howard was there because college coaches are not allowed to be there. But because Jett's play, being a father supersedes being a coach.
As it should, yes.
As it should, yes. So Juwan, I did a on-camera interview with Juwan. He was great. By the way, we've talked about this before. This is why coaches for years, in the pre-NIL days, if they had their kids on their team, their kids would always room with the best prospects. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because your kid then gets an apartment and you can buy whatever you want for your son who's on because he's your son. So you would go to a coach's son apartment and it's got the nicest TV, the nicest stereo, they're ordering pizza every night, whatever they wanted. Everything you could possibly want in a living space is available to you because the coach is, quote, buying it for his son, but the best recruit is his son's roommate. And there are real advantages to being the father of a student athlete. And that's the most obvious one, but it is the explanation for why Juwan Howard was allowed in the building this weekend. And no other college coach was. But just being around, all those people was really great. It was a fun experience. I hope they keep bringing it back to Memphis and keep it on CBS Sports Network. And then, it was the first time in a long time I'd seen some of these guys, and the first time I had ever seen Hansel and Manuel up close, who, of course, we talked about on a previous podcast. He is the young man from the Dominican Republic who lost his left arm when he was 6 years old. He was climbing a wall, it collapsed on him, and they had to amputate the arm. And he's become a social media phenomenon and an incredible story for obvious reasons. Like, he's a legitimate college prospect despite having one arm. But I will say it was hard for him against this level of competition. He got a little overwhelmed. I mean, I don't mean to anything, but just speaking plainly, he got in the game, first possession, they drove right on him. He doesn't have a left arm. He can't. They just kept driving right on him. And he looked like he was a little overwhelmed by the talent that was elsewhere on the court. It doesn't mean he can't play college basketball, but he got frustrated at certain points in the game because I think he was running into a level of talent consistently that I don't think he's had to deal with consistently.
We got to get out of here in 2 minutes. There's some curiosity in the chat. Do you think your role on this podcast and talking about Amari Bailey has a direct correlation to him not playing in this Iverson Classic?
I would hope not. I would think so. I would think not.
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think one has anything to do with the other. But when I heard Amari Bailey will not participate. I got the text message from our production team. I hit it with a thumbs down. I did a thumbs down on it.
It's too bad.
It was disappointing.
Yeah. Well, what can you do?
But I did get to meet J.R. Smith's lovely girlfriend.
Okay.
She's a model.
All right. There you go.
I'll let you guys Google that for yourself. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Huck. And shouts to Larnell.
There we go.
I decided I'm just going to shout out Huck from now on. I'm tired of looking up Baylor players. It really is just like another thing I have to do every time before we do a podcast. And
Okay.
I was like, you know what? I'm tired of doing it. Plus, I'd gone through a pretty good list. So now just Huck. That's Scott Drew's dog.
Is it Scott Drew? No, it's not Scott Drew's dog.
Whose dog is it?
That'll be for the next podcast.
I thought it was Scott's dog.
No.
It's Bryce's dog?
Incorrect.
Who does Huck belong to?
Same bat time, same bat channel. Next podcast I'm on. I'll give you the whole backdrop on that one.
If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Make sure you're leaving nice reviews. Like, type some words. There's more of us than there are of them. If you're still in here and you haven't already smashed the like button, knock that out. Brandon Davies would do it. And we will talk to you again on Thursday morning. At the latest. Maybe before. But at the latest Thursday morning. Till then, take care.